Highlander The Series takes the Highlander idea and finally lets it breathe. Duncan MacLeod moves through the modern world like a man carrying centuries in his pockets. Every episode opens another piece of that life: a duel in an alley, a rival who remembers him from another era, a flashback that lands like a scar. But beneath that steadier world, the show was built under strain. The franchise was bleeding out, and television is what kept the legend breathing. The schedule was so brutal it bent the story on camera, forcing choices the writers never planned to make. And when the series ended, Adrian Paul did not just move on. His next chapter became part of the myth. These are 15 weird facts about Highlander the Series, the show that rebuilt the legend week by week and made it feel real again. Number 1. Highlander only works if the audience trusts the rules. The first film feels mythic because it plays fair with its own universe. Immortals, duels, the gathering, a clean spine that makes the story feel sacred, like you're stepping into an old legend that just happens to be wearing an 80s leather jacket. Then the sequels started yanking at that spine. Instead of building on the mythology, they kept bending it, rewriting it, patching it, then asking fans to accept the next fix as the real version. Every new chapter felt like it was arguing with the last one. The foundation stopped feeling stable, and once that happens, the franchise loses its center. Not the actors, not the swords, the trust. Because when the rules start changing, nothing has weight anymore. A villain doesn't feel like fate, he feels like a plug-in. An ending doesn't feel final, it feels like a temporary sign that will get replaced in the next sequel. So the smartest move the producers made was almost the least dramatic one. They didn't try to win people back with a bigger movie. They stopped trying to solve the problem with escalation. They ran. Television gave them the one thing the sequel machine couldn't: time, space, oxygen. If you're trying to rebuild credibility, you don't do it in a 2-hour sprint where every scene has to top the last movie. You do it slowly, one episode at a time. You let the mythology settle. You let the tone rebalance. You let the world feel coherent again. It wasn't a creative flex first. It was a trust mission. After the sequels bruised the brand, the job became simple: stop forcing, stop patching, and earn the audience back in public, week after week. And this pivot didn't happen without the guy people assume was just the face of the original. Christopher Lambert helped open the door before the cameras ever rolled. As the producers explored a TV version, Lambert connected them to the president of Gaumont Television. That one introduction mattered because it turned the idea into an international co-production. Multiple partners, multiple territories, a structure that could fund a weekly mythology and sell it worldwide, instead of depending on one studio's mood. So the irony is brutal. Highlander didn't survive by pushing forward. It survived by escaping. It stepped sideways into television, rebuilt its rules in slow motion, and turned a franchise that sequels were breaking into something weekly audiences could trust again. Number 2. After the sequels, the TV series had one job before it could sell sword fights or mythology. It had to rebuild trust. And the fastest way to do that wasn't a new character or a new logo. It was one face: Connor MacLeod. If Christopher Lambert showed up in the pilot, even briefly, the audience would relax. Foreign buyers would relax. Everyone would understand this isn't a knockoff wearing the name. This counts. So Lambert agreed to appear as a bridge. At first, it was treated like a friendly favor, about 3 days of work for around $50,000, the kind of help the franchise land on its feet deal. That sounds simple. Then the financing started arguing with the story. A French accountant tied to the funding looked at the cost and decided Connor was too expensive. The note was blunt: cut him, write him out, remove the line item. And suddenly, the pilot wasn't being shaped by mythology anymore. It was being shaped by spreadsheet panic. That decision triggered the real crisis. Connor wasn't just a creative bonus, he was part of the sales package. The foreign money wasn't only buying scripts, it was buying legitimacy. The German backers heard Lambert had been cut and they threatened to pull their financing, so the order flipped overnight: put Connor back in. Now Lambert was being yanked out, then begged back in, and the favor tone vanished. He was irritated enough to refuse, but the production couldn't accept a no, because the pilot's funding was starting to lean on his presence like a crutch. So they came back with the only language that could fix it fast: a massive check. The offer jumped to $500,000 for the same 3 days of work, and Lambert accepted. Not because the cameos suddenly mattered more artistically, but because the show had proven something in the ugliest way possible. Before Highlander the series could tell a single story, it had to survive its first battle with money. Connor could open the door, but he couldn't live in the show every week. Number 3. Before they could cast a new Highlander, they had to avoid one landmine that would have blown up the show on episode 1, Connor. The first TV plan was the obvious one: keep Connor MacLeod as the weekly lead, set the story before the gathering, build episodes around duels and flashbacks, then steer the whole series toward the film's endgame. Like the franchise is simply stretching the legend into syndication. That safe plan had a problem: trust. The sequels had already rattled the audience's trust. The mythology had been bent and rewritten. Fans were tired of watching the rules slide around. So the show wasn't launching from clean ground. It was launching from a brand people were already side-eyeing. And in that route, the Connor plan turns poisonous the second you say it out loud, because everyone knows what comes next. Connor can't be the weekly lead, so you'd have to recast Connor MacLeod. And recasting Connor doesn't feel like a normal TV decision. It feels like replacement. It feels like the franchise admitting it can't protect its own sacred character anymore. Even if you hired a brilliant actor, the audience isn't watching the pilot to fall in love with your new show. They're watching to judge the new guy who dares to wear Connor's name. So the producers took the cleanest exit possible. They made the lead new, not a new Connor, a new MacLeod. Same clan, same rules, same sword world, but a different man with his own history. That one choice took the weight off the pilot, protected Connor's legacy, and gave the series room to rebuild the mythology without starting a civil war with the fanbase. Number 4. Now the show needed a lead who could carry the franchise for years, not a guest star, not a one-season solution, a face that could hold the myth steady long enough for the audience to trust it again. Adrian Paul didn't look like the safe answer. He had credits, including the Colbys and the syndicated War of the Worlds series, but he wasn't a movie star. No built-in headline, no instant comfort for nervous broadcasters overseas. If the wrong guy takes this role, the series doesn't wobble, it dies. So Paul walked into the audition and did something that could have ended his chances in one sentence. He told them to stop looking. He said they'd already found their Highlander. Paul later said it was partly a joke, but it didn't land like desperation. It landed like ownership. Like he wasn't asking permission to be Duncan MacLeod. He was showing them what Duncan feels like when he enters a room. And he wasn't the only name on the board. Other options were still being considered, including Alistair Duncan and martial artist Gary Daniels. But Paul left one picture behind, and it kept sticking. the producers kept comparing him to a young Sean Connery, not as a look, but as a presence, classic leading man gravity, the kind of presence that makes a 400-year life feel believable. So when the decision finally came, it didn't feel like they cast an actor, it felt like they met the Highlander, and he already knew it. Number 6. This show jumps centuries without warning. One scene is modern day, the next is a flashback in a different country, a different costume, a different century. That kind of structure can feel scattered fast, unless something grabs you by the collar and says you're still in the same world. So the series made the first 30 seconds do a job most shows spread across an entire episode. Queen was already the franchise's signature because Princes of the Universe had branded the original film. The series kept it as the theme, and that choice instantly solved a problem. Every episode begins with the same surge, the same anthem, the same pulse that tells your brain Highlander is back. No